Hey, y'all, each week on The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, we ask big questions and share hot takes about the pop culture we love.
Now that we have YouTube, we don't need any more biopics. If they've been alive such that I can watch them on YouTube, I don't need it.
I don't think that music is getting worse. I think y'all just don't listen to artists who aren't in the mainstream.
Taylor Swift, retire. It's time to retire.
The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube.
Hey, this is Sophie, host of Life in 7 Songs. We're mixing it up a little bit. We want to know what songs have shaped you. So choose one song that's had a major impact on you, record yourself talking about it, explaining why in a voice memo, and email us that clip at lifein7songs@sfstandard.com. I can't wait to listen.
Carrie would just go on about what a disaster this movie. I said, what's it called again? Star Wars. I have these bagels on the side of my head. This is going to be such a disaster.
This is Life in 7 Songs from the San Francisco Standard. I'm Sophie Behrman. Joining me this week is Griffin Dunne. Griffin is one of those actors who seems to pop up in just about everything we like to watch. Only Murders in the Building, Billions, I Love Dick, Succession, Law & Order SVU, the list goes on and on. But it starts with starring roles in some classic 80s hits. An American Werewolf in London and Martin Scorsese's After Hours. More recently, you might have seen Griffin in This Is Us, or perhaps in the 2017 documentary he directed about his aunt, Joan Didion. She is just one of several notable writers in Griffin's life. There's also his father, Dominic Dunne, who became a famous journalist for Vanity Fair. It's no surprise that Griffin became a storyteller himself, releasing a memoir in 2024. A memoir that captures both his star-studded childhood, his star-studded friendships with the likes of Carrie Fisher, as well as the shocking and tragic event that forever changed his family. Griffin Dunne, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Griffin, I've heard you say that you didn't want your memoir to feel like a bunch of name dropping, which I totally get. But in your case, it seems hard to avoid. Your aunt was Joan Didion, as I mentioned. Elizabeth Montgomery from Bewitched was your babysitter. You have a story about Sean Connery saving you from nearly drowning in a pool. As a kid, were you aware that this was kind of unusual?
No, not really. I don't think any kid has perspective on their own lives. It really wasn't until later. My father, during the heyday of his social life with my mother, gave these incredible parties, and these, movie stars and great directors I would grow to admire and study their work. My parents had given a party that was around the pool, and I didn't really know who these extraordinary people were. They were just sort of drunk adults as far as I could tell. But I did know who the man was doing laps in the pool, Sean Connery, who I knew as James Bond. I wanted to show James Bond what I had. And I just jumped in the deep end, imagining him to be quite impressed. But I sunk like a stone. I'm down there, I realize my mistake, and I'm looking up at the adults around the pool, paying no mind to the child at the bottom of the pool. And I went, oh my God, they're not going to find me till the pool man comes. And suddenly I feel this hand lift me up by the rump and plop me onto the side of the pool. And he says, oh, it's a wee bit early for the deep end, sonny.
Incredible.
My father, as if knowing his life like this would never last, took pictures of all these parties and all these extraordinary people and put them in a scrapbook that he would iron in these big leather-bound books, of which there are about 20, that are an incredible document of Hollywood life from 1959 to 1967. And then I looked at it when I was just sort of old enough to kind of understand, like, wow, that's Billy Wilder? I talked to him? Really? And that was the beginning of my thinking of a memoir, knowing that this was rather unusual and somewhat exceptional and obviously privileged, but also that we were still a family that dealt with divorce and malfunctions that are universal.
Your first song is by Vicente Fernandez. It's Volver. What's the story behind this song?
Well, My mother was half Mexican, and she was brought up on this cattle ranch called the Yerba Buena in the border town of Nogales, Arizona. My mother loved mariachi music. And when we would go to see our relatives in Nogales, we would always go to a restaurant called La Roca, and they had a mariachi band. She knew every mariachi song, and she loved to stump the band. She never did. They always knew it. And this was the song she loved. It's Return to Me, Return to Me. It's an incredibly romantic song. And my mother would just get this look of swooning when she would hear it. And it was just a very happy memory.
Y volver, volver, volver a tus brazos otra vez. Llegaré hasta donde estés. Yo sé perder, quiero volver, volver, volver.
Was your mom a romantic?
She was. She loved feeling emotion, particularly about music. She would just get lost in the songs. She had an enormous collection of LPs of classical music and Mexican music, and she really educated us. We grew up really loving classical music, which was unusual. Her love just worked on us by osmosis for all music, really.
I understand your parents, and you mentioned this, they divorced when you were about 9 years old. How did they break the news to you? And life seems to have really changed after that. How so?
My father was a very different man toward the last decades of his life. At this time, he was, to me, kind of insufferable, very dictatorial about what we should wear and how things should look. And it was very, even as a young boy, I could tell it was just superficial. So the time came, when the parents tell the children their heartbreaking decision. And as parents do, they come up with a plan of that it's a total collaboration and we think this is the best and we both agree and all that stuff. And so my father had the first line and he went off script and just burst into tears and said, "Your mother's leaving me." And he cried. And then my brother and sister were younger. They'd never seen a grown man cry, let alone their father, and they start to cry. And I'm like dead inside. I'm like thinking this could actually work out pretty well. So I start to fake cry. And I'm covering my eyes, I'm making the thing. And I have fingers over my eyes, and I open two of my fingers, and I see my mother is crying. And she opens her two fingers, and both our eyes are completely dry. And we both realize we're both faking it. So a bond happened between mother and son in that moment. And being the oldest, I sort of became the man of the house, as it were, and her confidant and, a lot of oversharing going on. But I felt terribly grown up to be, confided in.
Why were you sort of okay with the divorce?
I thought, we won't have to clean our room and wear the clothes we were told to wear to go to school and, won't have to go to church. And all of that turned out to be true. Our meals went right out the window, or our seated meals. We could eat whenever we wanted and take our TV trays and watch television with mom and watch the $1 Million Movie, and all structure went out the window, which I loved, as a kid. But it was less fun for my dad. All the people he thought were his friends kind of dumped him, and he went into financial crisis. And, as I got older and my mother took me in even more confidence, it became apparent she was telling me that he was closeted as well. And even though I was, very young teen at that time, I had tremendous empathy for my mother to have been married for the 10 years with this secret. I don't think they ever talked about it, but it was a secret that was just, and it was a sort of atmosphere that we grew up in. And also how painful for my father to have kept this secret, which, at that time could kill your career. If you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could lose your life. It was terribly sad for both of them.
And in reading your memoir, I also understood that you were a little bit embarrassed of your father, or sort of, is that fair to say?
Yes, no, I think, my father was not athletic. My best friends' fathers were movie stars who played lumberjacks, and they always say my dad could lick your dad with one hand tied. Yeah, he could lick my dad with two hands tied behind his back. So one day I just told everybody at school my dad robbed a bank and was in jail.
Just to kind of seem cool.
Just to show, what a tough guy he was. And this lie went through the school like smallpox. And the principal called my dad. Went, "Oh, you're out." He goes, "What do you mean?" "Well, your son told us about the bank." My dad called me into his room and said, "Is that something you'd like me to do? Rob a bank?" And quite honestly, yes, I would have loved it. But, that kind of just shows this little boy embarrassment,
Yeah. Well, the next song you chose is tied to a memory just after your parents' divorce, I believe. It's Last Train to Clarksville by the Monkees. So what memory does this song evoke?
When they divorced the first summer, my mother went to Coronado Island, which is off San Diego. We had a house. My mother had been going there as a child with her grandmother. So we were there for the summer, and this song was on the radio over and over, which I love.
Take the last train to Clarksville and I'll meet you at the station. You can be here by 4:30 'cause I've made your reservation. Don't be slow. No.
On Coronado Island is a Navy base called North Island. And the jets would fly right over our house, really, really low. And my mother dated a jet fighter pilot, which was like the coolest thing I could ever imagine. And about as much of a contrast to my own father as could be.
As macho as possible.
Yeah. And this guy would fly over the house and he'd tip his wings as he would come. And I just idolized the guy. And I remember this song was playing and I'm just chatting away to him and just telling him, like, wanting to know about the planes. And I said, "Oh, this is the last train to Clarksville. This is my favorite song of the thing." And he turned to my mother and said, "What's it going to take to get this little brat out of here?" And I was so stung. And my mother kicked him out and she never saw him again.
I love that your mom also sent that guy on the last train.
Oh, that was it.
Home.
He sent him on the last train. I hadn't thought of that.
So I'm curious, did your parents' divorce impact your relationship with your siblings, potentially bring you guys closer or cause a divide?
It didn't certainly cause a divide. We always loved each other and were very close. But my grades were terrible in school. I was considered like rather stupid. I turned out I had dyslexia. So I was sent away, at 11, I was sent to this boarding school in Massachusetts. It was all boys and very, very strict. On top of that, I had to repeat a grade. So I was, had kind of that humiliation of being with kids younger than me. My brother and sister were, in California, and I was 3,000 miles away. So I was distant from really everyone. I became very self-sufficient. The school was so strict. You had to lie, cheat, steal to get away with anything. So I kind of got a cons mentality. It's sort of like that thing where someone is sent to a prison for a minor infraction and comes out a hired killer. So I was somewhat removed from my siblings and parents.
So you actually chose a song that speaks to your teenage years, maybe when you were in boarding school. It's Nature's Way by Spirit. How does this song fit into that time in your life?
My best friend, we met when I was home on vacation from this boarding school and became immediate best friends. We would hitchhike everywhere, and we were taking drugs at quite a young age. We were 13 and 14 and taking acid and getting into all sorts of juvenile delinquent type trouble. And this band called Spirit, we passionately loved. And we went to see them in concert. We each got a girl to take who could care less about us, but just wanted to see Spirit. We were 14, we called a cab, took us to the concert, we dropped acid, and the four of us watched this concert, and it was on a revolving stage. I still to this day don't know where it was. And it was just a magical evening. Sorry to condone drug abuse at such a young age, but this was my early teens favorite band.
Nature's way tell you something's wrong.
Great breakup song.
Were you into girls at that time?
I was very much into girls. I went to a boys' school. We weren't allowed to see girls. There was 2 dances with girls at a girls' school. These dances were both schools. We were kept from the opposite sex. So we would, when the bus was going to arrive to take them back, we'd all rush into the woods and just start making out like crazy.
So you mentioned earlier that your mother loved classical music, and that connects to your next song. You picked Mahler's Adagietto Symphony No. 5. Tell me why you picked this one.
Fan is too lightweight a word for how she felt about Gustav Mahler. She had a box set of every one of his symphonies. She had a bumper sticker on her Chevy Nova station wagon that said Mahler Grooves. And there was a Mahler-thon that took place once a year in Laurel Canyon. And it started at 6. And you go into a house, and it had nothing but mattresses in the living room and these other Mahler freaks. And they'd all lie down, and they would play everything Mahler ever wrote. And it would end at 8 the next morning. She did this every year. And the 5th was really my portal into Mahler, into understanding her love of Mahler. After the divorce, as much as she wanted the divorce, she was quite lonely, and she liked her wine, and she would drink alone and listen to this and just let this music just tap into her melancholy. She would just live in it. She would live in her melancholy, and Mahler was her accomplice. I could listen to that over and over and be struck by the very similar emotions that she had. It's just so beautiful, but just so heartbreaking.
Coming up, as Griffin moves to New York and gets his first big break as an actor, heartbreak strikes close to home. Stay with us. Hey everyone, I want to recommend a podcast. Hard Knocks is a show about resilience, self-discovery, and finding meaning after chaos, hosted by Amanda Knox. Each week, Amanda sits down with fascinating guests, writers, thinkers, artists, to explore how we learn, grow, and rebuild ourselves after life knocks us down. Amanda brings humor, honesty, and hard-earned perspective to every conversation, drawing on her own experience of being wrongfully convicted and rebuilding her life. Amanda was a guest on Life in 7 Songs in one of our most moving episodes, opening up about how music became a lifeline during her years of wrongful imprisonment. On our show, she spoke candidly about turning pain into wisdom and also about how we're all so much more than our worst moments. If you liked that episode, you'll love her show, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Jesse Alejandro Cottrell.
And I'm Emily Dreyfus, and this is Pacific Standard Time.
We have stories from all over the state of California, all the big battles that are happening here.
Prop 50,
housing affordability,
tech,
and immigration.
And we're really excited to bring you the stories about how California is dealing with what it means to be alive in 2025.
Subscribe to Pacific Standard Time, a new weekly show from the San Francisco Standard.
We'll have new episodes every Wednesday starting November 19th, wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, so you end up in New York City. Tell me how your acting career began.
I found success as a movie producer before I found it as an actor, which is pretty unusual. I was 23 years old with my partners, Amy Robinson and Mark Metcalf. We optioned a book and turned it into a film called Chilly Scenes of Winter that Joan Silver directed.
So that's 23 when you find that success, but you moved to New York around 18, right? So there's,
Correct.
5 or so years where you're kind of struggling
too.
to make it work, basically. And I
Yeah,
think
it was
you chose a song for this time. You chose "Life During Wartime" by the Talking
Oh, yes,
Heads.
yes.
What was going on?
It was a New York that doesn't exist anymore. This makes me think of Times Square, the pimps and the porno theaters, and New York was broke and I was broke. It just captured like this crazy energy of the city at that time, and I didn't have headphones. There wasn't a Walkman to be had, but this would be as I'm strutting up 42nd Street. I was doing a off-Broadway play that was off 42nd Street. This was what
the
I
score.
pictured.
It would be
this
the
was
score.
the score.
Got it. 1979, "Life During Wartime."
The sound of gunfire off in the distance. I'm getting used to it now. Lived on a brownstone, lived in a ghetto. I've lived all over this town. This ain't no party, this ain't no disco, this ain't no fooling around.
So good.
So while you were living in New York, you lived with a friend of yours, Carrie Fisher, and most of us know her as Princess Leia in Star Wars, among so many other roles. How did you and Carrie first meet?
My brother Alex came home one day and he said, I met this girl and I'm in love with her and I'm going to marry her. My brother was just the most soulful, intellectual, spiritual person. He was reading philosophers at a young age. He felt everything so deeply. And I said, Alex, don't come on so strong. Don't tell her you love her. He says, she has to know. I go, I don't think she does. And pointed to me and goes, you don't talk to her. Don't do that thing. You do. I go, what? That Charles Boyer thing, making her fall in love with you. And so she came to the house and, my mother and sister and I were trying to be quiet. And, I was trying to be quiet. My mother was trying to stay out of the way. But Carrie was hilarious and really tapped into my sense of humor. I mean, it was just so hard to keep my mouth shut. I just had a rat-a-tat for every line she had, and, when she found out my sister's name was Dominique, she started to sing what her mother sang, Debbie Reynolds, when she played a nun, Dominica, Nika, 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 Nika. That's the one I should have chosen, actually, for Carrie. And then suddenly we're all singing and just butchering the song, and we're all roaring with laughter. My brother was a little mystified and saw he was losing ground here. And my mother told me to drive Carrie home. So we're heading to the car, the same Chevy Nova with the Mahler grooves on bumper sticker. And she gets into the driver's seat. And I go, what are you doing? She goes, teach me to drive. And she just takes off and drives up people's lawns. And that was it. We were best buddies and, remained friends on our move to New York. We ended up getting an apartment together. And so then we were roommates. She was the very first person I ever knew who became famous, like overnight, globally, mind-blowing famous. I was still struggling. I was like a popcorn concessionaire at Radio City Music Hall. Suddenly, every rock star and movie star of the time was in our apartment. I couldn't handle it. People treated me differently and everybody's trying to get to me to get to Carrie. And so I moved out. I had to get my own. It wasn't my time to know all these people.
Did she have a sense she was going to, get crazy famous when she got cast? I'm sure she, called you or told you.
Absolutely the opposite.
Oh.
She would call me from London, wake me up with a time difference, and just go on about what a disaster this movie. What's it called again? Star Wars. I have these bagels on the side of my head. We run around with these guns that don't even have triggers, and a big ape is following us, and there's a little man in a trash can rolling along, and this is going to be such a disaster. And we went to the first screening it was ever shown to an audience at the Ziegfeld Theater, and it was very clear it was going to change movies forever. 3 stars were born that night.
Well, she became a superstar in, what was that, 1977, but it was just a few years later that you had your first big break, right, with An American Werewolf in London. How did that part change your life?
I wasn't really kind of aware sort of the change. I didn't even read for the part. I just sort of talked to the director, John Landis, and he gave me the part. I understood the script. I understood the character completely. We had a very similar sense of humor. But it was like suddenly I'm on the Concorde flying to London to shoot and then shooting every day. I'd never had a part so big. But the movie was not a huge hit. It wasn't like a Star Wars thing by a long shot. People really, critics were confounded and even offended that there would be both humor and horror in these two genres. They didn't believe they could work until then they saw Ghostbusters and they went, what's brilliant about Ghostbusters is they combine humor
Right.
and horror. But it didn't catch on at the time.
So around the time that An American Werewolf in London came out, that was also around the time that you received a call from your father, 1982. Can you tell me about that call and what had happened?
He called me very early in the morning, having just gotten off the phone with my mother, who had been in the room with a homicide detective in Los Angeles, to say that her daughter, my sister, was in a coma on life support, having been strangled by her ex-boyfriend. She dumped him and he'd come back and he'd attacked her, strangled her, and she was on life support. And my father called to tell me that. And it took a moment to digest what he said, what he was saying. And wait, did you say homicide? So I rushed right over and I went and got my brother, and we all took the next plane to California. I helped Dad pack, and I remember him. She was, alive, and he pulled out a dark black suit and he said, I don't know if I should take this or not. Meaning, would it be a funeral? I said, I don't know. And he packed it. And so she was on life support for 5 days, and we had to take her off.
So sorry. That's so painful. And you chose a song that reminds you a little bit of your sister, Sailing by Christopher Cross. Let's listen to a little bit of it, and then you can tell me why.
Oh, the candles can do miracles. Just you wait and see. Believe me. Sailing takes me away to where I've always.
My sister, she loved Christopher Cross, this song. And even though it is a very beautiful song, we would always tease her. She had just a soulfulness she was just taken with songs that sort of pulled at your heart. But that one was, to this day, always gets me, and it just reminds me of the three of us.
Can you tell me a little bit more about her? Like, what was she like?
She was so sure of herself from such an early age. A little bossy, would, boss my brother and I around. An animal lover like you never knew. We had 2 dogs and 3 cats. All of them were strays that Dominique had picked off the street. I think the word got around that they would just show up at her door. And the day she decided to become an actress, I was struggling in New York and doing everything but acting. She called filled with excitement to tell me the news, and I said, oh, God, don't do it. It's the worst profession. Oh, it's so awful. And she was so angry that I didn't support him. And I said, it's just going to take a really long time. I think within a month of her calling me, she was on a soundstage in a TV movie. It was called Diary of a Teenage Hitchhiker, and she was playing the teenage hitchhiker. She was the star and was enormously talented, and everyone who met her saw it. And, much loved girl.
Did you attend her killer's trial?
Every day. It was very rough. And every day we went there, the defense was doing the blame the victim thing, so we had to hear that. Anytime the jury would hear about prior incidences of violence, they were sent out of the room by this confounding judge. And they came back with a verdict that was, he was out in 3.5 years. Not even for murder, for manslaughter. It was shocking to not just us, but to everyone who read about it. But it was, the demarcation of all of our lives, where nothing ever was really the same. Nothing looked the same. You never had things you never thought about, domestic violence and injustice in the courtroom and victims' rights. My mother became an activist who started her own victims' rights group called
Wow.
Justice for Victims of Homicide. And they changed laws, created laws. They're instituted in 25 states around the country. We, all of us, but my parents in particular, always made the public know about what goes on in the courtroom when a woman, particularly women, are raped and killed, and how that is turned on them. And it's evident in every article my father wrote, who became a crime reporter. And, he wrote about the Simpson trial. He never let you forget. I guess they, rather than succumb to the tragedy, they found a purpose in it. And for, the past 40 years, I've been active in one way or another with gun violence prevention.
Tell me about your next and last song. It's Cortez the Killer from Crazy Horse and Neil Young.
It's a lesser known Crazy Horse song, but it just has that guitar sound, just hits me deep. And the way it just weaves in and out, and the somber rhythm and the movement of it. It's just a great driving song and a walking song, and the mood it evokes. It has an infinite quality to it. It has no beginning and no ending. It's almost like a mantra. Just that thick, velvety sound that Crazy Horse had with that guitar. I just never tire of it. It just evokes a feeling that I like to carry around.
You wrote us that this is one of the songs that you play all the time as you walk the streets of Manhattan, even to this day. And I'm curious, what's on your mind these days when you're playing music like this and walking the streets? What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about other people. I mean, I'm an observer, I'm an eavesdropper. I think visually. That's why I like directing movies. And I kind of look for inspiration for imagining other people, how did that guy end up in a wheelchair? And that guy's still in his underwear. Or, oh my God, that couple, they're so in love, but I don't think they're going to make it. Just giving everybody little biographies. And I do think about story a lot. I had great teachers. We grew up hearing, absolutely absurd, crazy, funny things that when I decided to write the book, years before I actually did, I would always jot them down. I would keep a file of stories I heard either being told or things that pretty crazy things happened to me too. And I'd make note of that and I'd let them all pile up until I was sort of fecund to take on a book.
But your memoir, it stops at 34, right? So there's a lot. How come? I mean, is there a part 2 coming or?
Well, I wasn't thinking that. And I did think, at one point, I was like on page 250 and I was still 13 years old. I thought I got to bring this in. I had no idea how I was going to end it. And I got to the part where my daughter was born and Hannah was born cesarean. So they gave me my daughter, fresh out of the womb and put me in a dark room with like a little tube to clear her nose and passageways. And it was very, very dark. And I am writing this and I'm remembering this incredibly powerful feeling of being visited. And I was very convinced it was my sister. I could feel it, and this 15-year-old child could feel it and just started to sort of smile. And I'm writing this, and I kind of got a little emotional writing it. And I just took a breath and I went, wow, I opened the book with death. I'm ending it with life. I'm done.
That's a beautiful story about your daughter and Dominique. Griffin, thank you so much for sharing your 7 songs with us.
Thank you for asking. Thank you.
Life in 7 Songs is a production from the San Francisco Standard. If you enjoyed this episode, you might want to check out our conversation with Jay Blakesberg. He didn't grow up around stars, but as a legendary rock photographer, he's been documenting music icons for nearly 40 years. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe and like the show. It makes a huge difference for us. Our senior producer is Jasmine Morris. Our producers are Michelle Lands. She also mixes the show, and Tessa Kramer. Our theme music is by Kate Davis and Zubin Hensler. Clark Miller created our show art, and our music consultant is Sarah Tembekshian. Executive producers are Griffin Gaffney, John Steinberg, and me. As always, you can find this guest's full playlist at sf.news/Spotify. I'm Sophie Behrman. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.